Hi, I'm Dave Vickers and welcome to the Photo Show. In today's episode we're going to take a look at using the Radial Filter within Lightroom and show you how you can make some localized adjustments to your images to start making different looks to your editing. So first thing I'm going to do, I've opened up a image from a wedding here. Let me hide this side panel here. If you want to hide any of the panels, click the little arrow on that side. So there we go, so we're ignoring that side completely and we're just using the image itself and the right hand panel here. So this is a raw image from a wedding, so before I start I'm going to do a really quick edit just to adjust it so we can start to work on it. I'm going to bring the exposure up ever so slightly, add a little bit of contrast, drop the highlights down, bring a bit more detail into the dress, open up the shadows a bit more. For the whites, I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key if you're on a Mac. Just come up ever so slightly till we start to see a few spots like that there, somewhere between the two. That'll do fine. Let's set a white point and do the same with the black. Hold the Alt and Option key as we're clicking and drag down. Little touch of clarity, and I'm going to drop the vibrancy down a touch as well. Okay, so this is a really basic edit. So now what we're going to look at is using the Radial Filter within Lightroom. If you come to your toolbar here, just below the histogram, coming along here, in a previous episode we were looking at the graduated filter for working on skies and things like that. If you come across the next one across is called the Radial Filter. And you can see by the shortcut, if you hover over the graduated filter, you can see the shortcut for that is by pressing M on your keyboard, whereas the radial filter is pushing Shift and M. So we've already got a clue there that there's something similar between the graduated filter and the radial filter. So we can either just click on the icon here or press Shift and M on our keyboard. And as you can see, as I press that, all of these settings changed here, and these are now the settings we can use when we're using our radial filter, and they're all at 0 at the moment. So at the moment the radial filter is going to have absolutely 0 effect. If we bring the cursor into our image, you can see now we've got little crosshairs, and if we click and drag, you can see that we start to open up a circle or elliptical shape within our image. And you can see it's got little grab handles on the side, so we can pull it in closer like that and make it more of an elliptical shape, or we can widen it out to make it more of a circular shape. There's also another little tip here. As you can see, as I move the handles, the entire radial filter adjusts. But if you hold down your Alt or Option key when you're moving those handles, it will just move that handle point. You can see there I can bring that handle point right in, and the rest, the top and the opposite sides, don't move. So let's set that like that for the time being. So now we've got a radial filter around the couple. Now, as the radial filter is set in default, it's actually going to affect the outside of this filter. It's not going to affect the inside of this area. It's actually going to affect the outside area here. We can show that. Let me just drop the exposure down, and you can see what it's actually doing. It's darkening the outside of the radial filter. It's having little effect on the inside, but it's darkening the outside now. So we can use this to create a kind of vignette kind of look. If you want to see what area is being affected, you can add the mask. So as I did there, if you just hover over the central button, the mask will appear, or you can just press O on your keyboard. Press O on your keyboard and that will show where the masking. And the red area, the masking area, is going to show where the effect is going to take place. The clear area is going to show where the effect is going to have no effect at all. So press O again and we're back to our adjusted image. So we've adjusted the exposure down. And you can see now that it's darkened up the outside of this image. Underneath here we have an option that says feather. Now feather allows you to dictate how hard or soft the edge of your radial filter is going to be. If we bring this all the way up, you can see now that the feathering is becoming a lot more, and it's affecting a lot more of the area within the original image. If I press O to bring the mask up, you can see now that it's a very small area that's clear. If I start to bring the feathering out again, you can see that it's becoming more of a defined area. If we go all the way to the bottom, to 0, we've got a hard edge here. Now if we press O again and get rid of the mask, that's obviously not what we're looking for. So I'm going to feather this selection to a point where we're happy with it. I'm going to say about there, so about 50%. So it's actually where it started off from. Now I think that's a little bit too much, so let's bring the exposure up slightly. And let's slightly desaturate the outside area as well. So let's have a look. We can see what effect we've actually had here. We can use the little on-off button at the bottom here to turn on or off the radial filter. So that's it off, that's it on, that's it off, that's it on. So you can see what we've actually done here is we've managed to create almost a custom vignette around the image to bring more focus onto the bride and groom. If you want to have a look at this without the radial filter showing, if you press H on your keyboard, that will hide. So H for hide, H for hide will hide the filter. So you can just see what effect it is and press H again and it will show the filter back in. So that's one way you can use the radial filter. As I said, at the bottom here again, we have a little tick box that says invert mask. So at the moment, all of our effects are taking place outside of this radial filter. So if I press O on the keyboard to show the mask, again you can see all the areas that are in red are being affected, all the areas that aren't in red are not being affected. If we click the invert mask here, as the name suggests, it's going to swap that around. So now what's happened is all of those effects we've made will happen in the center of the radial filter, whereas the outside will not be affected. If I press O to get rid of the mask, you can see now what it's done is it's actually darkened down the couple. But in this image, that isn't what we want. So let's untick that. So that's one example. That's one way of using the radial filter. Let's have a look at another one. So let's pick another image here. Okay, so now we've got an image of the Hotel de Louvre in Paris, and as you can see, this was taken in early evening, so it's not the most balanced shot. But what we'll do is I'll do a quick adjustment, and then we'll use some radial filters just to show you what else you can do with an image. Where is the other one we focused? I'm going to use it now to start to bring out some details. So really quickly, I'm going to do a quick edit. First of all, let's straighten this image up a little bit. So using the crop tool and just tilting like that, press enter, and that's given us a straighter looking image. Let's bring the exposure up a little bit. Let's pull up the shadows, drop down the highlights. We'll do a quick white and black set point, so alter option on your keyboard while you're clicking. We've already got a bit of white there, so we'll leave that as is and set the black point as well. So we'll bring that down there. Touch of clarity. And add a little bit of vibrancy and saturation. So there we go, that's a really quick edit. Again, if you want to see where you've got to on an image when you're editing it, you can press the Y key to give you a side-by-side view, which will show your before and after. Press the Y key to come out of that. But a quicker way is if you just press the backslash key on your keyboard, it will now toggle between a before and after view. Okay, so that's a really quick edit on this image. So how can I use a radial filter within this image? We can use it to really start to bring out different areas. So if we have a look here, this area through the archway here is quite shaded and in shadow. If we make any adjustments here, we're making global adjustments. If I really pull the shadows up on here, it's pulling the shadows up on all of the image. That's not what I want to do. What I'd like to do is just have adjustments made on just specific areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a radial filter. So we can click on our radial filter here, or keyboard shortcut of Shift and M, and that's going to bring us up a new radial filter again. So it says new there, and I'm going to just draw a little radial filter for this area here. To move the radial filter around, just come in the center, you get the little hand tool, and you can click and drag and move it wherever you like. And I'm going to use the same trick I used before, just by holding down the Alt or Option key, just to customize the shape of this a little bit more, just so it's affecting just the area I want. Okay, I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is make some adjustments here, and it's just going to affect the radial filter. If I drop the exposure down, you can see now what's happening is it's actually darkening the rest of the image, but leaving the radial filter there as it wants. That's not what I want. I want it the other way around. I would like the effect to take place within the filter, not without the filter. So to do that, I'm going to click the invert mask at the bottom there. So you can see now that where I've dropped the exposure down, that area within the radial filter is adjusting, and it's just that area that we're affecting. We're not affecting the rest of the image. The rest of the image is staying exactly as it is. As I toggle through the exposure here, you can see that that's lightening and darkening. So let's add a little bit of exposure into that. Let's grab our shadow slider and open that up a little bit as well. And you can see now, really quickly, if I toggle at the bottom of the radial filter dialog box, we've got to turn on and off. And if we watch the area where I was just affecting here, that's with the radial filter on, that's with it off. That's with it on, that's with it off. So we've made a really nice effect here of bringing out the details in this area. Now, we could go and do that all the way across, but an easier way here is to duplicate what we've already done. So if we right click in there, one of our options here is duplicate. So as I click that, you can see now that suddenly that area has become twice as affected because it's now got two radial filters on it. If I click and drag within that, it's going to move one radial filter, but we've still got our original radial filter here. So we've now got two radial filters in the same, using the same settings. And I can move this around, and it's almost like a little torch. Look, we can light up that part, or we can light up that part, and light up that part. What are you doing in there? Ooh. And you can use it to, to light up certain sections. But now we've got this as a separate radial filter. We can adjust it. So let's spin it round using the side handles. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key to just drag it out in the direction that I want. Move it up a little bit. I'm going to use my arrow there just to change the angle. And just stretch it out. There, so once again, if you want to hide the radial filter to see what you're doing, press H on your keyboard, H for hide. And you can see now that we have actually two separate radial filters. We have one operating here, and we have a duplicate that we've now stretched out, which is working on this area. If I turn those on and off, the difference it's made in the shadow areas here is absolutely huge, but it's had no effect over the rest of the image. And again, you can, with the radial filter, you can add as many as you like. We can add another one in now. Let's click radial filter and add a new one in. So we've still got our original two radial filters in here. And I'm going to add another radial filter for this side down here where the street goes away from the side of the building. And it doesn't have to be on the entire image. You can see here that I've actually overlapped it slightly there. So we've got our radial filter now on the street now, and the thing I want to do is I want to affect inside the radial filter, not outside the radial filter. So I'm going to click invert mask, and again, if we press O on the keyboard, we can see now that the red area is going to be affected. If I uncheck invert mask, that means the outside is going to be affected, and that's going to be left unaffected. So we want inside to be affected. O on the keyboard to get rid of the mask. And now I can just make some local adjustments to here. If I pull the shadows up, we start to brighten that area up a bit. Add a little bit of clarity. And again, I'm going to duplicate that one. So right click, duplicate. That's going to go twice as bright now. and I'm going to drag that one all the way across to this side now. And because this is a separate, now we've duplicated it, even though this was a duplicate of that, we can now adjust these settings separately from the original one we did there. So if I want to, say, bring the exposure down slightly there, it affects only this radial filter. It's not affecting that radial filter there. So there we go. That's a really quick tutorial on how you can use the radial filter for different effects. In the first image, we were looking at creating a vignette around the couple to bring more attention to them. And in this image, we've used the radial filter to pull out more details in certain areas of the photo. If I hit the backslash key now, that's where our image started. That's where we've ended up. That's where our image started. That's where I've ended up. I think you'll agree it's made a huge difference. I mean, we made global adjustments to bring everything else out, but the adjustments we've made using the radial filter, if I turn those on and off, you can see how much difference it's made in the shadow areas around the bottom of the buildings and the buildings at the side. So there we go. That's a really quick tutorial on how you use the radial filter within Lightroom. For now, I'm Dave Vickers. This is The Photo Show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.